I paused and I stopped and I was like,
And you reflected.
this is where the identity crisis came in. Welcome to the Hair X Friends Week at this podcast, where we share our thoughts on the pharmacy profession, experiences as healthcare providers, and explore our identities as two women of color going after it all.
As we share our stories, we hope you laugh, maybe cry, and feel inspired as you get to know us, because at the end of the day, friends, we got this. Hi, Sue.
Hey, Saley. How's it going?
Good. It's been busy. It's been very busy. Family issues, taking care of my mom who's unwell. I've talked about that a little bit on the podcast. But we are home. She's good. She's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I'm recovering. Hospitals are hard. And it's a new thing. I've always been the patient, and now being the caregiver, this is a very different lifestyle, but I'm grateful that I'm able to do that.
We need to have a whole conversation about just us and our healthcare experiences too, like us as patients, pharmacists as patients. Because that's gonna be its own conversation. It's gonna go into so many areas of what we think about healthcare on the patient side of things, which is absolutely interesting.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah. I mean, June was a pretty good month. I just got back from Portugal, and then
And what did you do in Portugal?
I saw Taylor Swift.
Yes.
I don't think we talked about that.
We need to right click right there. If you are basic, you saw Taylor Swift in the States, honey. But if you were bougie and bad, like Thu, you went all the way to Europe to experience her in a foreign country that is beautiful.
It was a really beautiful country. Or Portugal's just a lovely place. I can understand why Americans specifically, are moving to Portugal. I totally get it, Americans. And so I don't know. It's really funny because I didn't end up buying any Taylor Swift merch. But I'll tell you, I bought a lot of Portugal merch. I had a hat, I got a sweater, I got a shirt. I was like, oh my God, who am I?
Portugal stole your heart.
It really did. It really, really did. There's just something really calming, but not calming about it. Like it's just a nice vibe, I guess.
That's amazing. Yeah. I'm glad that you were able to have that experience.
But then, of course, I came back, and then Bear had a bunch of diarrhea episodes.
I know.
And you know what? It's one of those things where he wakes me up in the middle of the night. So we wake up several times during the night, kind of thing. And I tell this because this is true. I am like a doggy diarrhea expert now, because Bear's had stomach issues since like he was a baby.
Really?
And I kind of know like what the texture's supposed to look like. I know what the color's supposed to look like. I know what the protocol is. It's disturbing. It's very disturbing. I never thought that I would become a diarrhea expert.
I am the poop expert. I would make that
legit. Well, dog poop. Sorry,
poop.
not
She's
human.
Like, I want to be specific.
Specific species. I don't know about cats or anything either.
No. Is he better?
Yeah. He's better because I follow the protocol. Give him a bland diet with some probiotic,
Oh, okay. Next time Louie's having an episode, I'm calling you.
Yeah, I am the expert. I will ask you all the questions. I will give you specific things to do. Anyways, hopefully that conversation was not too TMI for everybody. But hi, everyone. My name is Thu.
Hi, y'all. This is Saley.
And we have an interesting episode for you today. Today is all going to be about us exploring our identities. This is something that we've done before. We had an episode about names. We had, even Meet the Dynamic Duo, which was our first episode ever. We really spoke about our history, our background and why we've come to where we are.
Yeah.
And do you know of any other episodes where we dived into
I feel like every time we talk about situations that challenge how we respond, situations that challenge whether our choice is speak up, stand up for yourself, or retreat, think about it, figure out, strategize. Our identities and our cultures and how that's contributed to our responses has always been something we've talked about. And I love that about us, that we, I know the topic today is authenticity, which is going to come as a surprise to a lot of people. Like if we start talking about specific examples where we did things that were truly inauthentic to who we are, I think that's like, for me, the thing I always think about, how those moments left me and how I never want to feel that way again. And that's kind of where my courage comes from.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into it with you. We may cry, but
We
I hope
may.
not. So we'll
We
see.
may. We may.
But before we jump right into all of that, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and write in the comments, engage with us. And that's how YouTube will push our videos out to more people. And then if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please share and write a review and tell the people why we are the best pharmacy podcast that's out there.
Period.
We are. Period.
Period.
Let's just tell the truth, and we are the best.
I just love that part so much.
Yes.
Listen, we don't get to do any of this without you and your support. We say it every time because this is true. And to help us stay motivated to continue, engage with us, like, comment, share, inbox us. Whatever you are comfortable with, we assure you that we welcome it. But sharing and reviewing our podcast is how we become discoverable for other people that are into things like this, where the conversations are real, they're raw, they're true, and they are relatable. Something that we value very much in everything we share here.
Very well said, Saley. Very well said. Okay, so I guess I'm going to start because I messaged you.
Yes.
And I said, hey, the next episode we're going to do is all about identity because I'm going through some sort of identity a crisis.
Awakening. We're calling it an awakening.
It's more of an awakening than anything.
Yes.
But essentially, what had happened, what had triggered this whole episode is because I'm working on a manuscript with some other really amazing Asian women leaders in pharmacy. And we decided to write about we decided to dive into why we don't see as many Asian American leaders in pharmacy, but in general everywhere, despite there being a large population of Asian Americans working in the environment. So there's a lot of data out there that suggests that there's a large population of employees, but very small amount of those guys going to a leadership position. Specifically for Asian Americans. And so our manuscript is really looking into what are some of the barriers to that. And for me, I decided to look into navigating identity and conformity and the struggle of that to then reach career achievement, which is kind of a tough topic to look up because there's not a lot of research on it, right? And so there's a lot of having to, I think, I guess, evaluate the data that's out there and apply it to my life and what I see in real life, and then make my own conclusion of what I understand. I do want to read this paragraph that I wrote for the manuscript. I don't know if we're going to actually use this part of it, but this is kind of what triggered it all. Okay, so I'm going to read to you what I wrote, and then you let me know what you think, and then we can kind of go down the rabbit hole that I went down.
Okay.
I wrote here that many Asian American students experience the internal conflict between feeling grateful and burdened by the sacrifices made by their immigrant parents. Many feel obligated to ignore their personal goals and ambitions to honor the wishes of their family. A common trope in the Asian community is that Asian parents pressure their children to pursue limited career options such as lawyers, physicians, or other science-related professions. And as a result, many Asian American students find themselves following a career path that were chosen for them to meet the wishes of their parents. This cultural expectation may seem harmless, but can actually lead to a deficit in identity development and promote a sense of passiveness in professional endeavors. And when I that last sentence was kind of my assessment of everything that I've read. And I wrote, I get why people are very passive in this culture. I understand why, Asian American students or Asian American pharmacists or whoever may come off as passive because we've been kind of trained to be in a way. Yeah. So, I wrote this paragraph. I wrote my part of the manuscript. I wrote my draft, and then, I'm on the couch and I'm just surfing the web, as a little reward.
I just love the visuals.
And I ran into, so I'm on Instagram, and I came across this reel that was from Brené Brown. Okay. And I might share it with you, but it's about belonging and fitting in. Have you heard her talk about this before?
I know the reel you're
Your
talking.
eyes.
I know the reel that you're talking about. I'm obsessed with her.
I know, me too. So I love Brené Brown in the sense that I've read a few of her books, but they've all helped me so much. One of them is about kind of like, I don't know the titles. I'll probably have to put them in the description or something. But one of them is basically about belonging and just staying true to yourself, like belong to yourself, essentially. And that really helped me during the pandemic, because there was so much hatred in the world that book really helped me understand what was happening. And then another book about vulnerability, and it really told me that, it's important to be vulnerable. And that also helped me to be vulnerable on LinkedIn and online, to talk about the struggles that I've gone through, to connect with other people. And so her work's always been very profound to me. Yeah. But let me just share the screen so I don't mess up, her quote or anything like that.
What I appreciate about Brené Brown's posturing in this area and talking about vulnerability, leadership. So I'm obsessed with organizational psychology. Brené Brown and Adam Grant are two people that are like at the helm of people who I listen to about how I become a better leader and things like that, and person, period. But what I appreciate about her is the simple language she uses to explain incredibly complex and deeply convoluted human emotion. She explains it in really, really simple language that almost makes it impossible for you to not have awakenings and openings of your mind and forcing you to rethink. It's not stated in any complicated terms. If you hear her say it, it forces you to pause, reflect, and have some type of response to that. And I think that is a gift.
Yeah.
Not everyone is able to do that.
So let's watch what she has to say about the power of belonging over fitting in.
Yeah.
For me, I belong to me. So even when I feel alone and I wonder like, who's my crew and who are my people, I belong to me for sure, for the first time in my life, maybe. I was so shocked to learn in the research that the opposite of belonging is fitting in, because fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What do I need to wear? How do I need to act? And changing who you are. And true belonging never asks us to change who we are. It demands that we be who we are.
And I think we lose ourselves sometimes by trying to belong in groups that we don't fit in.
That's what teams and groups deliver. They deliver this thing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
If we fit in because how we've changed ourselves, that's not belonging, because you betrayed yourself for other people.
So I watched that, right? And I initially, the first thing that I thought about that was, I get it. I feel like I'm trying to branch out of the pharmacy profession, and therefore I feel like a need to change myself in a way. Like when I walk into a conference room or when I'm presenting or showing up within the pharmacy profession, I feel this need to, not the need, but like I feel like I need to practice being better about being okay with people looking at me and being okay with showing up and, being somewhat the center of attention. And that includes speaking up during a meeting, that includes voicing my thoughts and opinions, that includes if someone's like, oh, could you tell me if you can hear me or whatever, I turn off my mute and say, I can hear you. Like actually
verbalizing that.
Yeah, like show people that I'm here. And that was something that I haven't done in a really long time. And so I was like, yeah, I get it. Like I'm having to change myself and fit in and all this stuff so that I can show up and be this businesswoman that I want to be.
Yes.
So that was my initial thought when I saw that. But then I paused and I stopped and I was like,
and you reflected.
Oh, wait. And I reflected. And I was like, oh, wait. And this is where the identity crisis came in.
Oh, God. Because I love how it doesn't matter how serious the topic is. We're going to find a way to silly it up somehow.
Oh, no. I realized that, wait a minute, what if I had it backwards? What if I have been twisting myself into the shape that my family wanted me to be, and twisting into shapes that society thinks that I should be, and just losing my sense of identity for the last 30-something years.
Yeah.
Girl, do you know what that means though? Like here I am thinking that like in the future, I'm going to have to change myself to go where I want to go.
Yeah.
But actually the truth is I have been lost so much. I have lost so much of my identity in the last 30 years that now I'm just trying to rebuild what I think is right for me.
Yeah.
And that is the shocking part is one, I've heard her say this before. This is not the first time I've heard Brene Brown say this.
Oh, you were ready to hear it this time.
This time, I think it was also because I wrote that paragraph right before I heard this, that I was able to apply the information that I've learned about what Asian American identities could be.
Yeah.
And this whole thing of fitting in. And what's shocking is I never thought that I had to fit in and lose myself to be part of a community that I felt like I belonged in. You know what I mean? Like I was born into an Asian community.
Yeah.
But I still feel like I had to change myself to fit into that.
But that
dynamic.
comes from,
I don't know. That's so wild to me. What do you think about that? Because that is so shocking to me.
Is it you find that? Okay. Because I think probably because where you are now, I went through few. So I've had my identity rocked a few times in life, right? So my relationship with myself and my understanding of myself was challenged so early in life that what I see myself as and my place in the world, my place in my family, the expectations from my family, I started having those conversations so early, so early. I'm the firstborn, right? And I always talk about the fact that like my dad will call me his little pathfinder because the rest of my siblings were going to come along and be the trailblazers. So I had to go the hard places. I had to do the hard things to show my siblings that it's doable. You can do it. You're going to come along this path I'm trying to lay and you're going to blaze that trail. When I get diagnosed with end-stage renal failure, my first response to that is, how come it had to be me? And feelings of inadequacies and feeling like I am the defective toy in the assembly line. It messes with how you see yourself, and then how do you in turn show up in the world for the person you want other people to see you as. And I think like what you are describing, especially in that paragraph, it's a narrative I think a lot of immigrant families are going to relate to, because we feel this deep, I mean, deep almost isn't deep enough to describe the sense of gratitude that you have to live with for your parents making these impossible sacrifices to bring you here with your own dreams and aspirations. Like, how can we reconcile these two things so that you are able to show up in a way that you still feel like is doing yourself a lot of justice with heritage, ambition, but also the space you want to occupy.
But let's talk about the actual family dynamic then, because it's not simply just, this is what we want you to do. And then
it's
you
not
are
that
able,
simple.
It's not. But that's the component that makes it a really tough thing to reconcile.
Yes.
For even me to realize, like, oh wait, what? So moving on into this identity crisis, the thing that really, broke the camel's back, so to speak, was when my sister texted me, and she's kind of trying to figure out like what she wants to do. She's in med school right now, and she's trying to figure out like, what residency do I do? Blah, 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 So she's asking me for advice, and she said, why did you do pharmacy? Like, why did you do pharmacy? and so I'm reading my text to her. I said, well, mom and dad, I call them Mumsy and Pumsy.
Oh, you're too cute.
Well, Mumsy and Pumsy said I should, but I like chemistry, so pharmacology was a good fit, and sometimes it feels like a puzzle. And then I was kind of like, and then I asked her, why do you ask? And she's like, well, I'm just trying to figure out what I should do with my residency and all this. And I did include, and then in addition to what I said initially, I also wrote, but I think I've always been creative and entrepreneur person, but mom and dad were scared of it and I never thought it was an option. So now I'm rebelling and doing a podcast and seeing if I can make money from it. And that's just my way of letting me be myself. And she replies like, oh, that's so true. And she said, I still have a sad memory of mom and dad yelling at you because they found this comic that you made. So sad. And I was like, you remember that? She's 7 years younger than me. So she was a lot younger when this happened. She was probably like in elementary school or middle school. I was like, you remember that too? Like, what?
Wow.
And she was like, yeah, it was like a core memory for me. It wasn't even something that happened to me, but I remember it. Yeah. And she said, I have always enjoyed reading your comics. So when mom and dad were upset, I was so sad. I think that's the part that like made me emotional out of all of that, was because I'm like, wow.
It left an imprint on her.
It left an imprint. It was so significant. This experience that happened to me was so significant that it left an imprint on her.
And it's in her psyche. Like, there are things that our parents absolutely don't want for us. And I remember what happened with Thu when she ventured out into comics, and I need to make sure that like I don't do that. Like, indirectly seeing things happen. Well, they talk about that with slavery, why they would beat the slave that tried to escape in front of all of the other slaves, right? It's if they see how the one person with the courage to say, this is not for me, I'm going to leave, how that person is punished. It doesn't matter if you've thought about it or not. You know that this is not something that I will ever, ever try.
Right.
Because I can't have that happen to me.
So, I mean,
I love that. Well,
what? Are you going to cry?
I love that. I love that the two of you are openly talking about those things. And because, hi, Bear, what ends up happening in families is that the 1% that has recalls of things that happened to them that they felt like contributed to their paths in life, other family members will try to discredit that person and that person's truth and that person's memories. I'm really reassured and happy that you have your sister to be able to have these really transparent conversations with her, because I think it's helpful for you to be able to live in your truths of, I wasn't delusional and having the response that I have had with that experience, right?
I think that is what I mean when I say like it really just kind of opened up everything for me, because here I am, like I'm starting to kind of recognize some things, but then it wasn't until my sister, which is so wild because all of this happened in the course of like 3 days. And so it's just like one after another. It was so weird.
Things were aligning.
Exactly. And it wasn't until my sister said that to me that I was like, Oh, wow. That was a big deal because I always thought
Yeah.
it was like just this thing that happened between me and my parents. But it was such a significant event that
Yes.
my sister even remembers it to this
Remembers
day.
it.
To this
Hey,
day. It's
there
a
are
core memory of
layers
her.
of
So,
hers.
of hers. Yeah. So, anyways, after all of this, I was like, this is, it made me realize like, this is why like obviously I haven't been going through life like a zombie, right? Like obviously when I picked this path for myself, or I'm sorry, when I got chosen this path for me, I kind of decided to make the best of it. And that means
Yeah.
that intentionally doing things that will make me happy in
Yeah.
this path. So
Yes.
choosing clinical pharmacy, for example, going into a field in pharmacy that I actually really enjoy.
Yeah.
And then, working towards that kind of practice and building that career. So all of that's very intentional. So I'm not like a zombie at all. And I was just thinking about like an analogy that I can help myself go through it, but it's almost like my parents are driving and I've always just been the passenger. I've always
Yeah.
been the passenger,
Um,
and which is fine because, at the end of the day, it's still a safe path. Like, I don't think that
yeah.
like they've chosen this crazy, thing for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
It's still
Yeah.
a safe, reasonable path, and I'm safe.
Yeah.
And I will
Yes.
always be safe, sticking with this path. And so we're driving down the road. All of a sudden, I am ready to take over the wheel. And I'm like, but I've never driven. So then do I keep going the path that they've started for me? Or do I have to like sit down and reflect on, do I want to keep going or do I turn back around and start somewhere new or go somewhere else?
Right? Like, or this car is not even the car I want to be riding in.
And that is
I'm
the
gonna
sad
get
part.
out, right?
It's so
I'm gonna,
sad.
it's sad. I'm gonna get out of this car and I'm gonna get in a completely different car.
Completely a Porsche. Getting into
Yes,
a Porsche, baby.
I'm gonna get into a Porsche and I'm going to drive myself somewhere else, even if that destination is not clear in my mind. But I know that this car and where this car is headed, I don't want to go where we're going anymore. And I
Yeah.
want to not only take charge of the wheel, but I actually want a different car for the journey.
But the different car is a challenge in itself because
Absolutely.
you are fighting yourself
Yes.
every freaking way. And that is
100%.
incredibly scary. You're
It's
just
very
like,
scary.
what am I doing? And you're right. Like when you
Uncertainty.
choose a different car, you literally do lose
Yeah.
like a lot of different things because
Yeah.
when I'm kind of going through this, I'm like, okay, if I didn't do pharmacy, what would I have chosen for myself? And I really mean it when I say I had an entrepreneur spirit. Like I had this friend of mine and we would be like, let's do this and make money. Let's make this and sell it at school. I always had this mindset. So I'm like, would I have done business school? Would I have gone into marketing and whatever? But then I was thinking like, if I go those routes, like the people that I am friends with now, like I may not even be friends with them anymore.
Right. It's
you
choices.
start to like
you can spiral. You can spiral on that.
Yeah.
You can spiral on that. You can spiral on that alternative eventuality.
Life, yeah.
The thing that I think about our identities and how heavily they've been influenced by our parents, and when we are finally coming into our own, I only think of courage. It's not because you have all the answers. It's not because you are so crystal clear about the how. I know in my case, some of the choices, I didn't even know how to get from A to B and didn't realize that A had A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't have any clue. But I was also really clear about the fact that where we are right now is not where I want to be, and this is not how I want to do it. But that takes a lot of courage. And I think for me, when I think about identity, authenticity, that is the thing that I'm always like telling people that this is going to take courage, not skill or clarity or any of that. it's going to take courage in recognizing step one, this is not how I want this journey to continue for me. And then once you make that decision, you're emboldened. And there's a lot of stuff that starts happening after that, because it just gets brave and brave and brave. You become brazen. You become brave in not only doing the things that you want to do, but also talking about the ways in which you are living and showing up.
Yeah.
I am really proud of you for sharing your story, but I'm really, really, really amazed at your ability to just kind of connect with these other Asian women that are all powerhouses. Some of them, I know them. They're all powerhouses in doing something to help put something out into the universe about an issue that is not only timely and relevant, but it's going to make a difference for organizational psychologists or whatever other type of psychologists that are interested in exploring what you all have already identified to be this gapping hole in our infrastructure presently with the lack of diversity in leadership. The question I have for you.
You have a question?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Where do you think your anchor is as far as the courage you have with how you show up? So what are you drawing upon, or what is your process when you decided, this is it, I'm going to make my first post, this is what I want to say? Because there's a lot, like every time you talk about your pivot into becoming a creator and to becoming through the creator, the LinkedIn post is a huge turning point for you. I'm curious about like, what went into that moment for you? Did you struggle with that moment of?
Well, we both had a career coach at the time. So
we did.
I think a career coach really did help. And I think very specifically when people are asking me like, oh, what did you learn from your career coach? I was like, I just learned more of how to show up differently than I've done before. So it was almost like I needed somebody to hold me accountable to the path that I really wanted, because if no one was there holding me accountable, I would continuously steer myself back to what I've already known. So I think having somebody like that to really push me was really what I needed at the time. But I'll tell you, like, even now, we're creating content now, I feel scared a lot of times when I post. The content that we make, sometimes, especially the ones that are really different, really new, like a skit or something, or like that drag one that we did. I mean, I knew it was going to be a fun one for us to do, but I always feel really scared to put it out there, because I'm like, what if people don't get it? What if people misunderstand it? What if? And that's all you feel. I literally, and I used to do this thing where if I make something different, I'll send it to my sister and I'll send it to someone else. And I'm like hoping to get a really good reaction. I send it to you.
I know I see it.
I
know I see it.
And a lot of times it's to look for reassurance, and sometimes I may not get it. And I'm like absolutely terrified that it's going to bomb or something. And funny enough, like, it doesn't matter. Just post the thing.
That's what I've learned. My sister and I was talking about this. I'm like, I don't even have a wave yet. I don't know what my approach to my reels are. Sometimes it's words on a screen. Other times it's in the caption. Other times I'm talking. I don't have an approach. It's just, what is the path of least resistance today? What can I create?
There you go. That's all. Sometimes that's all it takes, right?
So that I put something out and stay present on like my audience's feed. But
even like when I edit things and I'm like, it's still not good enough, it's not showing how I want it to be, there's a point where I'm like, I can't be this perfectionistic, like I can't be so perfect, like I just need to get it out. It's done.
That's what the people want.
Yeah, there's no more. Like, there's no more time. Just freaking do it. And, even if it doesn't do well, you learn something from it. If it does really well, then you benefit from it. And if it does normal, you're like, okay, well, it wasn't that big of a deal like I thought.
I met my goal. My goal,
Exactly.
1 reel a day, 3 wheels a week, whatever the goal is. If I'm on track with that and the commitment I made to myself to do that, then I'm fine. Because we've talked about this loosely, but this is a topic about authenticity, and we have to talk about social media's role and how it is contributing to how we decide, like, what is authentic and what is not authentic. Because it is a place that can really have you question yourself to your core. Like, you could look at how you're doing stuff and you're like, but I'm providing so much value. How come that post didn't take off the way it should have? Versus I'm just sitting here eating popcorn and I drop a one-liner that is about self-care or self-love, and that's taking off. So I think, like, for me, I remember this was a personal goal, like my challenge yourself for 2024. The focus was just being present online. If I can go all year being present online and working on deconstructing all of the insecurities I have about it has to be high quality, it has to be perfect, it has to be glossy, it has to be this. If I can figure out a way to let go of all those things, then I would have fulfilled my promise to myself. But I think that's really like what I think, like, my relationship with social media is just the overthinking of everything that goes out. So I can relate to what you're talking about there for sure.
So, I mean, in terms of courage, it's the tolerance of uncertainty, I think, is probably the best way for me to handle something like that, the pressure of creating for other people and allowing your work to be criticized and interpreted, in various ways. It's just the ability to just be okay with who knows what's going to happen, and then you take it one day at a time.
It
But
sounds
that's the
so
thing
simple, but
I know.
it sounds so
you
simple.
have to start doing it to practice, like, building that muscle in your brain.
Absolutely.
Because then as you keep going, you're like, it's really not that big of a deal. And then you go obsessing about something else. But,
and then what if it is, right? Like, I always think about that. What if it is that big of a deal? I learn now, okay, so I know that that's that big of a deal, but I try to make choices that are regret-free. The way I do that is to make sure that every single thing I do, I'm doing it exactly the way I want to do it. Because if I blindly am just following other people's trend or someone else's lead, and I'm going into it uneducated with just all these hopes and aspirations, that is the root of my regret. That's how I've always regretted every choice I've made. When I didn't do my due diligence to educate myself. Regret, always. But when I go in and I just do what I want to do and how I want to do it, and I'm rejected for that, or I'm accepted for that, regret-free, no matter how good or bad it goes.
Oh, 100%. I completely agree with you on that. Yeah, I mean, this is why I always say, like, I think the kind of advice I feel comfortable giving on this podcast is just like, what do you guys think you should do? What would you do? Want? Yeah, what do you want? Ask yourself, what do you want more than what should I do? What do you want? What seems right to you? What feels like the path that your authentic self would take? And I mean, so I think this episode can go on forever, but I do want to end with, it is a tough road out there, and hopefully, whoever's going through their own identity awakening can see this episode and see myself kind of experiencing through that and seeing life in a different perspective. And not spiral too much about what could have happened or what about this and what about that. It's very much like, now you're aware that maybe it's time to get that Porsche and drive into the sunset where you belong.
At high speed.
You know, as high speed as you feel comfortable.
Like,
whatever's right for you.
Whatever's right for you. We're not going to tell you what to do, but
we're not going to tell you how fast to go.
Is your thing, you know, go for it. That's funny. That's so funny.
Well, I think that's the end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And if you think that this episode speaks to you and it may speak to other people, please share it to them. For you to share this episode to other people, it's going to help us reach even more people and expand our reach to grow into the podcast that we are meant to be.
Yes. This episode, along with 20 others plus, it's wild. I can't get over it. Is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Like, rate, review the podcast. It helps us so much. You can connect with me and Thu individually. All of those handles will be linked in the description below, as well as helping us get our Instagram following to grow a little bit more. And we appreciate the support. Until next time, everybody, take care and don't forget it. We got this.
You got this.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.